I'm Leif. I work at SemGrep. I'm not the CEO of SemGrep. I just put together a panel of other CEOs. And we'll let y'all introduce yourselves, starting with Umaimah.
Hey guys, I'm Umaimah. I'm founder and CEO of Opal Security. We work on the ever popular least privilege and access management space.
Hi everyone, Oliver.
All right, let's go.
It's super important. Oliver Friedrichs, founder and CEO at Pangea. We're building components for developers to embed security into their code from the beginning, but have been part of a number of startups over the past probably 10 or 20 years now. Last one being Pangea, which became part of Splunk and is now apparently part of Cisco. Before that, Immunet, which became part of SourceFire, which is also part of Cisco. And before that, Security Focus, which became part of Symantec, and then Immunet, which became part of McAfee. So it's a sickness.
I'm Brooke Motta, CEO, co-founder of RAD Security, formerly KSOC. We are doing behavioral threat detection and response. My background is as a salesperson, formerly, working at BugCrowd, where I worked with Leif and some other BugCrowders here in the audience. I worked at Rapid7 for 10 years and Sonatype too.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Travis McPeak, formerly security engineer, started Resourcely 2 years ago. We are a configuration engine. We aim to solve misconfiguration by making it really easy and fast for developers to produce good configuration. It's great to be here.
Cool. Yeah. Friendly crowd. All right. Raise your hand if you've thought about starting a company.
Oh no.
All right. Keep your hand up if you've done it. Okay. Cool. All right, raise your hand if you're just here to support your friends that are on the panel.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, first question. It can go to anybody, but tell us about the first customer that got it and fell in love with your product.
I can go. So I think when you start a company, at least if you're like me, you have this idea, and it's just an idea. You have to make that into a product. That requires a ton of customer input, so it's a very iterative process. And until you actually have a customer, it's a science experiment. It's a hobby for the IRS standards. So the first customer is really important. I think the easiest way to do that is you build a design partner program, which is kind of a low friction, easy stakes customer. And then they understand your products very early and they iterate with you. So I remember the first one of those that we had, I'd started March 2022. We had our first signed design partner that paid some small amount of money to us by October 2022. And at that point, I thought, okay, there's at least something good enough here that people are willing to engage with us and put us through a small legal process. It was a good feeling of relief, but it's also a feeling of pressure because now you actually have to deliver something for them. So 3 months later, by January, the design partner was very patiently saying like, okay, where's the product? When can I take a look at it? I'm like, all right, yeah, hold on a second, we'll get there.
That's true.
Anyone else want to?
Yeah, so I think, one, definitely from the Phantom days, and it was public, so Uber was one of our very first customers back in the super early days when they were building their security team. And it was the team that originally built a very similar product at Facebook. So they literally built like an internal platform called Blackbird that was their SOC automation tool where they basically tied together all the different tooling in their SOC teams to execute. And they just didn't want to do it again, right? So in 2014, when we started Phantom, we started talking to them, and it was just obvious that, look, they knew how much work it was to build something like this from scratch. The source space hadn't really existed yet, right? So there's an opportunity to kind of create a new category, but also to solve a major problem for companies like Uber. So they got it right away. You know, Joe Sullivan was the CISO, obviously infamous now, but really got it and brought us in to help the whole team there. And four, went on to run Amazon Consumer as well, so another well-known CISO. So they just knew security really well and got it very quickly.
Yeah. this is kind of a combination of sort of both of these answers. A lot of your early sort of customers, even paying customers who might buy you, they're looking for like a point solution or like a point feature that's like going to get something solved for them quickly. That's just like the economics of like, you're talking to a startup, you're a big company, you get me access to databases, sick. But it's kind of touching on Oliver's question or response, when you find kind of that product market fit, it was very similar for us at Opal. So like for background, I had built an internal tool similar to, if any of you went to the Discord talk for their internal access tool, or like Leif built access service at Segment, we had this kind of initial cohort of customers who had gone through the pain of building it internally at their old jobs. So for instance, Figma's team had built at Dropbox, Maru, folks at Scale had built at Segment, folks at Databricks had built at Capital One. And so they just grok it, right? Like they show up and they understand, and to your point, they know that it's not going to scale after a certain point. And so, it's like the market kind of moves and you get the timing right and you get those initial traction of customers, and that's just like feedback that's gold, like absolutely gold. You will never like get that level of feedback from somebody who so intuitively understands your product.
Yeah, building stuff is fun. Maintaining stuff sucks. So.
Oh yeah. And UI UX, like the nice thing about security is it's like a little bit more product focused now. And the thing about products is you have to maintain them. They have to like actually account for different user personas, et cetera.
I was just going to say, and if you are venture backed, the clock starts ticking when you make that first sale. For us, the most exciting sales were ones that came in inbound because they did have that product niche need. And an actual approved project. We spend a lot of time talking to our customers in Slack and understanding use case, like why did you buy us? What was the budget need? And that allows for us to create repeatable motions that otherwise we wouldn't be able to create.
Cool. On a similar topic, this one came, I think, from LinkedIn, but how did you actually land some of your early design partners when you were just getting started?
So for Rad Security, we hired a woman named Cooper who's amazing. She's got tons of experience in demand gen. And so having her on our team definitely helped to kickstart demand gen funnel. My co-founder, Jimmy Mesta, and I have been in security for a minute, and so we were able to reach out to our LinkedIn network. We also use technology to help amplify our voice. New technology that we adopted recently, I was just telling Kimberly about it. It's called Amped, and it's basically, if you've heard of it, AI that allows for Jimmy and I to replicate ourselves, and it sends out messages on our behalf. Since we've had like 20 meetings scheduled this week. It might be terrible, but...
No, I said terrifying.
Oh, it is terrifying, but it's amazing because I spoke to another founder who said he wakes up at 6 a.m. every day to send out messages, and like we have those messages automated. So like any cheat codes that you can create for yourself when there's just a lean team, I suggest you try them.
Yeah, it's got to be a combination of everything. I think I at least had this idea that, you build a product and it's so good that everyone's just banging down the door, and like, as kind of a naive engineer, that was my view going in. And I realized that is not the case. There's a whole bunch of go-to-market magic that you probably haven't thought about unless you've done this job before. So it's really a combination of everything. You use your investors, your angels, any kind of friends. Like in the beginning, I was just trying to have conversations and find out if we were in the right ballpark. So some of those turned into design partners. Outbound, as was mentioned here, and then any kind of PR you can get around like what your company actually does. Because in the beginning, you understand what you're doing. Nobody else even knows probably that you exist. So we got one from our fundraising announcement, for example. It's kind of just, it takes a village to go out and get combination at scale. Not a lot of companies want to be design partners. It's kind of a pain in the butt for them. So it's really a special kind of company that has that mindset, and you just have to use every possible means to go find them.
One thing that we discovered at Bug Crowd in the early days was that people who were really interested in amplifying their voice in the security community oftentimes were early adopters. And so if you can find those people, to your point, that actually want to be early adopters and try something new and innovate, and then maybe work with your product team to help innovate for them specifically, it helps. And sometimes the people who have the loudest voices on like social media happen to be those people.
Yeah, I mean, to both your points, like this is not if you build it, they will come people. Like that is not how this shit works. You have to grind, and then I think people mention sort of different parts of it. So security, if you think about it, usually does not really become a market demand until you're at a certain size of scale and complexity. So what that means is enterprise. But early adopters are not usually that same profile, and they're usually maybe high growth tech companies or product led companies or consumer tech companies who are just thinking about these things in maybe a different way. So you want to kind of do two things, not to go too much into jargon. Brooke mentioned demand generation. So this is like your armies of people who spam you all, and you guys are like, please never email us again. Do not ever do this again. I will never talk to you again. Get me off your fucking mailing list. And then there's account-based marketing, which is this idea where you pattern match on certain kinds of companies. So if you know that if fintech really gets use out of your product, like maybe other fintech companies will as well. So you do have to kind of think about it from first principles, and then you just have to do it, even if it's painful and embarrassing as an engineer.
Yeah, and I think that like the days of cold calling to get a design partner are pretty like hard. It doesn't exist anymore. Like it's super hard to do that. It's warm introductions. It's like Travis mentioned, through your investors, relationships, having been in the industry, or even just making your product like dead simple to access, right? Like both at Phantom and Pangea, we had like a PLG approach. Like you could download Phantom for free. We literally got a Fortune 50 customer who did that, right, and accessed the product. And they mailed us saying, how much is it? And we're like, holy crap. Like, I don't know, Eric, he's sitting over there, like, how much was it, right? It's like, it's one of those things. So like making it super easy to access. And then, I mean, like the product does have to be impressive, right? You can obviously compensate with product by better sales, but if you're like an early stage startup, it's so noisy out there. Like someone said there's like 5,000 security vendors now. I mean, I don't know where that number comes from. Someone probably made it up, but there's a lot, right? So like, how do you separate yourself from all that noise of all of these other vendors? It's super difficult. So, I mean, you have to have a personal connection in some way, or come here or RSA and build it, right? And be in those environments firsthand to build that kind of connection.
Yeah. Next one. This one was also from Twitter, from Casey, who from Bug Crowd might be up here. But how much has selling and marketing to security people changed in the last decade?
I think Oliver definitely said it with cold calling. Like, we're not hiring armies of SDRs and BDRs to just like harass you and call you on your cell phones, although that probably does happen to some people in here often. I think building better together stories is really important now, and being part of an ecosystem where people can just plug you into, whatever integrations they're using. For us, it's EKS or GitHub, of course, like the normal Splunk and SIM sort of technologies as well. So, and doing that stuff earlier, like, back in the day at Rapid7 and even in the early days of Bug Crowd, we could wait a minute. Like nowadays, startups have to like build those integrations immediately. So that's definitely changed in go-to-market as well.
I'm not qualified to talk about this. I wasn't selling 10 years ago.
I mean, I think, look, actually getting in touch with the CISO now is very, very difficult, at least in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Right? Some people may have more success, but like they usually delegate like one level down or two levels down to their teams and actually, rely on their team's input before they make a buying decision in most cases. Again, because it's so noisy, right? I mean, I don't know, even in the last 10 years since when we started Phantom, like it's totally different. Like waking up and starting a new company and trying to repeat that same model, I mean, it just doesn't work, right? Like you said, SDRs, BDRs, that like I personally, just as a CEO of a tiny company, get literally dozens of emails every day, and I can't respond. I just delete them because it's like, so noisy. Trying to sell me SDR, BDR business, actually, right? I'm like, no.
Next up, who should or shouldn't start a company?
I'm passionate about this one. I'll go first. I think I had first of all, I read The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Anybody that thinks they might want to start, particularly venture-backed companies, should read that book. Ben Horowitz talks through his personal hell, something that he had to do as a CEO. I don't want to dissuade anybody from starting a company, but I do want to give info so that you can go in with eyes fully open. It's not a job, for sure. I can tell you that my brain has not disconnected from anything about this company in the last 2 years. I'm even when I'm on the company, I'm on 100%. Should be like 10 out of 10 at all times. If you come in and like you're like low energy, 7 out of 10 employees, investors, customers, they're all going to think like, oh, what's wrong? So be ready to bring the fire and do that for a sustained period of time. Also, in doing that, since it's so all-consuming and it's a full job, I'm like a half dad. Like even when I'm with my kids, I'm like half there, half doing something with the company. You just have to be ready for all that stuff. It's very intense, very consuming. I love it, but just anybody that does it should realize it will probably be way more intense than you thought it would.
I agree.
Yeah, I think I'll say something that sort of touches on this, but is maybe a little bit more positive, but no less intense. Insecurity is not a bad thing. Insecurity breeds ambition. Ambition breeds survival instinct. And the number one thing, like all successful companies, all successful founders, all successful like sort of endeavors have, is just like this death drive. Like you cannot let go of that insecurity. So if people in here have a chip on their shoulder, if they can't get over it, it's not. I don't think this is a healthy thing to say, but it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all when you're building a company, because it channels that obsession. And over time, as you scale the ways in which you interact and sort of like you're this like core, you change the way you like sort of present it. But at the end of the day, like what you do is you drive. You are like the engine, the obsession that drives. You pull people along with you. You pull customers along with you. So you have to have a really high pain tolerance, but like some people do, and you don't have to hide that. And I think that's like probably, if you have that thing in you, you probably will be successful as a founder.
I'll add one more thing too. If you have something that's just like eating away at you and you will regret if you don't go try it, and you're willing to tolerate, the discomfort and all of that, then do it for sure. I don't think you should get to the end of your life and think like, oh, I wish I would have gone for it and believed in myself. You're never going to feel like 100% about your idea or the market or any of that stuff. So
yeah, it's good to be insecure.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of steps that you need to take in the beginning just to like kick it off, and they're not as crazy as you might think. So like I remember thinking to start a company you need like $10 billion and crazy VC backing, 1 million people signed up to be customers already. And if you think about like the big picture, it can be overwhelming sometimes, but if you just start with the baby steps, like you just need enough money to pay yourself, your co-founder, and maybe a couple of engineers to start. And then you can do that through angel fundraising. Jimmy actually kicked off starting Rad Security before I joined, and he did such a great job with angel fundraising. We did a little bit more and then got our first traditional VC after. But I'm happy to talk to anybody about the process and how it all worked if you want to meet afterwards. And yeah.
Maybe that's a good next question if you want to just tell a little bit about the early fundraising. I think that would be something a lot of people would benefit from.
So for Rad, for our first pitch, we used to be called KSOC, but for our first pitch that we ever did, we got a term sheet. So I had like this false sense of confidence that like all pitches, like you're just going to get a term sheet at the end of it, which is not the case. And so we ended up with a few rejections after that, but then ended up getting a really solid investor in 406 Ventures. But yeah, it's definitely not easy. Luckily for me, I've been punched in the face a lot as a sales leader and rejected my entire life in that capacity. But still, you have to make sure that you figure out a way to iterate, change, improve every time to make it so that your pitch really resonates with investors. That's our founding story.
Yeah, I think things have changed quite a bit. Like when my first job as a CEO was back in 2008. I left Symantec to start a company called Immunet, and never had been a CEO. I'd seen it done, right, the last two companies, but like nobody would invest in me. It was one of those times where like people still cared that you had an MBA, and if you didn't have an MBA, you were like, you didn't know what you were doing. Now it's like totally flipped, right? Now if you're a product person, like you walk on water, right? Like MBAs, you just hire someone with an MBA, right? But that's how the Valley has changed. Like there's respect for technical knowledge, for engineering, for like actually building product, and that's what gets you funded now, right? And I think eventually, look, when you go public, maybe you'll bring on a professional CEO at some point who has that scaling experience, and not to disparage anyone if you have an MBA. I really wanted one for a while. But I think that's changed quite a bit, right? And so I think it's gotten easier for, all of us to raise funding in this climate with technical abilities and technical knowledge, because that's really what's creating software, obviously.
A few things that weren't obvious to me about fundraising. So first of all of this is for venture-backed companies. You can bootstrap companies. I think people think venture-backed is more glamorous. It's not. It's a trade-off. In fact, sometimes I think about it would be so nice to have a bootstrap company. I'm happy I'm doing what I'm doing, but it just puts additional pressure on you. The second you take venture money, those venture capitalists want to make at least 10x, but ideally 100 or 1,000x. So some companies are great businesses, but they're not venture scale. If your company has no pathway to basically 100 million in revenue, then VCs aren't going to be interested in that. That's the first thing. Second thing is the importance of founder market fit. So basically, ideas are a dime a dozen. Execution is going to be everything. They want to invest in the right team as well as the right space. What that means is that you have some unfair advantage that it's going to be really hard for other people to replicate, which will give you a head start. And then the third thing is a lot of people think about before raising funding that they should go build a POC. What investors want is to de-risk the proposition as much as possible. So unless the thing that you're building is going to be really technically hard to execute, you're probably better off spending your time not building something, but going and validating the market. Most of the risk in venture-backed companies is going to come down to do people care about this? Are they willing to buy it? Is there budget for it? Do you know who the budget holder is? So if you take the time that you were going to spend some hacky demo that probably investors aren't going to care very much about, and you give them instead, here's all of the conversations I had, here's the validation I got, maybe with some quotes behind it, I think that's going to make a bigger difference to investors.
Yeah, I'll touch quickly on that because I think, Travis, you hit all the major points. Venture capital, specifically, the big names, it's power law. All you're looking for is you're going to make 100 bets and one is going to be a massive, massive exit. So people have done sort of research on what is there any correlation with certain factors or certain variables with successful companies, and by and far market timing is the number one. Your team composition is a close second, but market timing takes it every single time. Think about, for example, there's been a new crop of phishing software, right? Or phishing or email detection software. And these security in particular, it just goes through these cycles. Right now, we're going through a cycle with IAM, I would say, right? And that's why you're seeing all these companies. So market validation is the number one thing for venture-backed capital, and then a strong team, the founder market fit piece. I'm actually there's one other perspective I think people, especially first-time founders, don't think about, especially in early stage rounds, which is founder alignment. So if any of you have ever joined a company as an employee under 10 people, one of the things that really your happiness and your success is predicated on is how aligned you are with the founders, right? And it's actually kind of the same way when you look for investors really early on. You want somebody who gets you and believes in you and believes in your vision, because the early days are very hard and non-deterministic. And if you have that luxury and that ability of choice, it's a very important thing, and I think it meaningfully affects your outcome.
Oh, one more quick tip. Investors are like everybody, and they think that things that they chase down are going to be better than things that come to them and try and sell them something. So if you have the ability to reach out to friends that are already connected to the VCs you want to talk to and say nice things and do a warm intro that way, that's going to be way better than you sending a cold email to them.
That's really good advice.
I'm so over this. Who cares? Just build this. But okay, that's a rant for another time.
I know, it's such a game of cat and mouse, but it's true, it works.
This one's from the audience. If anyone else out there wants to submit a question, you can go to BSidesSF.org/Q&A. But this one is, what is the hardest part of transitioning from either being an engineer or an individual contributor to running a company and bringing a product to market?
I make no money. I think that's the hard part in the early days, is you just have to be fine with, I guess, trudging through it for a little bit. At least for me. I don't know about you guys, but that was a change. Luckily for me, my husband also works in cyber, and he's able to support our family while we build a company. But VCs aren't going to let you pay yourself $10 million a year if you're a CEO of a company and give you money. Like, you just can't do that. So that was definitely a personal challenge. And then, I really like the B stage of a company and Series C stage of a company, and all the building blocks to get to from 0 to 1, your first customers. Like, that's really challenging to remember after being at more established companies how much work you have to do in the beginning just to get to those steps.
Yeah, I think, I mean, having done that, I used to, for 30 years, write code. They don't let me anymore, but I mean, it's one of those, you have to expand in almost every direction. It's like, not like you can't not do something. Like, you have to learn at least the basics. Like, I'm not an accountant or a lawyer. Like, I can review stuff, but I'm still not doing that. So, but what you have to do is learn how to hire people and manage people well, right? That do that with you and for you as a team. And that's really key, because we can't all be experts. Like, that's impossible for us to learn all of these domains. So, like, I'm a product person at heart, but I've learned enough about all the other dimensions of running a company to kind of know what I'm doing in most cases. But still, like, you hire people that know more than you do in every area and trust them, and hire people that you can work with well and build a team, right? And then you succeed as a team. So I think being able to let go, especially as an engineer, like, sometimes you're a control freak, because, like, you want to control everything, but you can't. Like, that's your company will fail if you try to, like, control every single piece of it. So I think it comes down to emotional intelligence. Like, you have to learn to be super high EQ and read people and understand people and learn how to manage people.
Yeah, in that same vein, what's been the hardest thing to give up, and why?
Wait, I wanted to answer.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Thank you. I think all of those things are true. I think the hardest thing is perspective shift. I think good founders and good CEOs, no matter the size of their company, do a lot of altitude switching. They can get into the tiniest details, and then they can zoom up. And you sort of forget that you have a different view of the company and a different time horizon than now the people even at a 6, 10, 15, 30-person company do. And it's really hard to sort of, like, cognitively be aware that sometimes you think something's going to go incredibly wrong. And there's no reason any IC should think that. Like, it's just, but it's like a very strange mental exercise. So I'll just say that. I think that's, for me personally, the hardest part. And then you have to learn to kind of, like, tamp down your anxiety and, like, recognize that some things just have to play out. It's weird. Even if you've been a manager before or a team lead like I was, it's a very different altitude.
When I started the company, I set a hard rule on myself that I was never going to do any engineering work. And the reason for that is because, engineering is most of my background. And I had this idea that going out and talking to customers is hard. Putting your product out there and somebody says your baby's ugly, or even worse, they say your baby's great and then they just ghost you. That stuff's hard. Learning how to have the conversations is hard. And I didn't want to be able to hide in the comfort of doing engineering work, because I knew it was important that somebody go out and do this hard work. And the full cycle of that is, I was in a meeting with 3 of my engineers the other day. We were talking about some product feature that involved them going in and validating a bunch of stuff. And they were just going through the product and pulling up code and all this stuff, and it just hit me. I was like, I have no fucking idea what these guys are doing right now. Like, I have no idea.
I feel like there's a bit of a counter. Like, I don't push code anymore, but I still run, like, architectural reviews. I still, like, I don't do the code reviews, but I think it depends, like, per person, per leadership style, per company. Like, we're a technical product, so I still like to be in the details. But there are also just, like, you have to let some fires burn, and that's just, like, it's, like, total insanity. Like, I am very, very neurotic about hiring, especially eng hiring, because I was an eng manager, and once you start scaling, you're like, oh, I just have to wait till this gets to the debrief. I can't do the resume screening. Well, I don't know why I'm whispering, but, like, you just have to you have to let things go so that you can actually scale. So I'll just say that. Yeah.
Cool. This one's from the audience. What's the biggest mistake you've made that you're willing to admit? They're not so friendly anymore.
No, I was actually, I feel like I've made a lot of mistakes.
I got one. We waited way too long to fire the first person. We brought on somebody that claimed that they had technical skills. We thought we interviewed them. It was fundamental that they had these skills. And we thought, okay, maybe they'll ramp up fast and whatever. By a month and a half into this person working at the company, it was clear that they weren't this A+ person that we needed on this core part of the product. And Loud and my co-founder, we talked about it, and we wanted to hold this really high bar. One of the things that impacted both of us was working at Netflix, where they're known for hiring the best, letting people go when it doesn't work out, and we wanted to hold the same bar. But we waited too long. We basically let it go for 4 months, and should have done it after the 1.5 months. So, maybe like 1.5 months, we realize it's not working, have a conversation. If they don't improve in another 3 weeks, then they're out. Let it go 4 months, and we vowed to never do that again. So since then, we've let people go. Basically, if somebody's going to come in, it's really obvious if they're going to be able to do what you think they can do early on. And so, we don't make that mistake anymore.
I think, like, for me, like, thematically, so this is kind of going back to, like, what it takes to be a founder. Like, part of your job is sort of, like, to will things into existence, especially in the early days. Like, there is kind of this, like, aspect of, like, I will force this into life. And that is both a very powerful and also very dangerous, dangerous temperament. And this is especially, like, easy to make mistakes with when it comes to things like, I'll give you an example. Like, we've had deal cycles where it's very obvious that we should have disqualified, but you're so used to pushing things over the finish line and course correcting and getting it done. Like, it's happened. Like, there's 2 major points that this happened over the course of Opal's history, and both times regretted it, burned the team out, and made the second time it happened, people were exhausted. I had people quit over it, and it's painful because you don't want to take risk. There's a part of you is I knew this wasn't going to work. That's why I was pushing so hard, and but at the same time it is your fault. It's your fault. Learning to, again, kind of temper the things that both make you good at building a company, but are also not helpful in scaling or empowering others in a business.
Yeah, I think one of the single biggest mistake was probably trying to start a company after the housing crash in 2008, when the market tanked, Lehman Brothers imploded, there was no funding available. And literally, I had to sit in my garage for a year writing code by myself, and it was crazy because I left a good job at Symantec, and could have stayed there probably forever. And I don't know where it is now, but anyways, so it's just timing matters, and you can't control the world around you. That's the reality. Is
Yes.
There's things that are so out of your control, the economy and budget cycles, and now, obviously COVID, all these things that happened in the last 10 years, where none of these things are under your control. So I managed to raise, I think we raised $2 million in a series, 2.5 Series A, which now is not even a seed. That's pre-seed, right? That's one person's check or something. Now people raise $20 million seed rounds. It's completely ridiculous. And we couldn't raise a Series B because it was 2010 and nobody would invest, right? And that was also my first time as a CEO, so it was super challenging. And we still exited to SourceFire, but it wasn't what we intended. We literally were trying to build CrowdStrike 3 years before George started CrowdStrike, right? So
Market timing.
Market timing was everything. We were way too late for antivirus and way too early for EDR.
Too late to explore the universe.
So, it's just, you can't always make the right decision, though. But passion is what drives you, right? You want to still prove something and build something important.
When do you think you should hire your first salesperson?
Okay, so your first salesperson is not going to look like your salesperson at I don't know, even 10 million in revenue, 5 million in revenue. Your first salesperson should be what I like to call bad student, good test taker. They're really smart. They're usually kind of weird, and they can run around the field, and they can problem solve like no one's business. They're like very creative. They'll wear the product hat. They'll wear like the biz dev hat. They'll do what needs to be done. If you find someone like that, bring them on ASAP. And it will be like magic, because they're basically going to be your like feedback loop in some sense, and they're going to enjoy it. Like people like that, they really enjoy it. Like that archetype is usually done by the time you like hit like Series B. They're like, this is boring, I'm out, but they thrive. If it's not that kind of person, I think like, there's different factors or different things to consider. If you have a very technical product, I like to say like SEs run the technical sale. So your SEs will almost be more important than any account rep, who will mostly do coordinating and scheduling. So basically once you start like having signals for product market fit, is what I'd say.
Oh, I was just going to say that I agree with you. The creative piece is really important. Otherwise, you'll end up feeling like, oh, I hired salespeople too early, because they're just the wrong fit for you. Yeah. But the people who are really creative, who can figure out a way to get deals across the finish line, understand objections. Like they might not close a deal for a while, so you have to get creative with comp plans and that sort of thing. But in the bug crowd days, we had a guy in the early days who sent a wheel of cheese to customers, and for some reason they loved it. I don't know why. It was very strange. But he did more business than anybody else, and he just hustled to get things done. And so, yeah, there's that creative persona for the first hire is super important.
Yeah, like sometimes it's like an engineer who's bored and is like, I want to see what this is like, or just, they're really good if you can find them.
Yeah.
And I think typically, like, you'll want, if you listen to VCs, they'll want to see the founder close some deals first, typically.
That is your job.
Like anywhere from like, $500K to $1 million in sales, right? If it's an enterprise product, for example, before they'll write a check, because they want to see some repeatability so that they're funding, a product that actually can, be sold, and there's a repeatable sales motion with at least like a ICP identified, like ideal customer profile, which is, they're in healthcare and they're in like the mid-market, like that's the ideal customer for this product. And like we can just fund this company to hire more salespeople and repeat that motion.
Yeah, but also it's not just about investors. Like you should do founder-led sales because one, you learn what your particular deal, like you're not going to learn this like reading on the internet. Like whatever worked for somebody else's company isn't necessarily going to work like for yours. There's some like common denominators, but and the second thing is it's product feedback. It's product feedback. Even if you don't close a deal, you are learning things that you will probably never get to learn again if you become successful. So I actually say like at least like 10 million, maybe the best security CEOs in the world, like they still run deals themselves. Like Nikesh at Palo runs deals, right? Like it doesn't change just like where you focus does.
Agree.
This is a friendly panel. Isn't there one question that was going to be debatable?
That was the sales one. The sales question was going to be.
Yeah, we need some spicier questions from the audience. Here's one. Does being a CEO suck your capacity for empathy? How do you stay connected to the humans on your team?
Somewhat. In one sense, you have to be more empathetic than you've ever been because you're trying to take in so much information you're not going to be able to spend as much time with individuals. You're trying to take in as much information from them as possible and really understand their ground truth, what they're trying to tell you and everything. And on the other, I don't know if this is empathy exactly, but I found myself, I'll get an email like, hey, Travis, how's it going? How's your dog, whatever. And then like to the thing that they actually wanted to ask. And I've just been replying with like one-line answers. And the reason I do that is because I have so much stuff going on that if I have to do the whole like, I'm great, how's your dog? And then actually do the thing, then it's going to sit there for 2 weeks and I'm not going to actually answer their questions. So I'm having to be much quicker and do away with some of the niceties. But I'd say my ability to empathize with people has actually gone up just because I have to engage it a lot to get the relationship and info I need.
Yeah, and I think they're not mutually exclusive. I mean, it's about communicating clearly, like what the goals and outcomes are, and you can do that with empathy. I mean, if you're dealing with like a performance issue or someone who's not working out in the company, that doesn't mean you don't have empathy, right? It's just not the right fit, or there's some kind of corrective action that has to be taken. So I think, like, you're still human, and you can still treat people well despite having to make tough decisions.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So, like, I'll sort of delineate with certain things. There's a difference between being nice and being empathetic, and there's also this concept of integrity, where integrity is like doing what you say you will, right? And that's probably the single most important thing. You should hire good people managers. They will make people's lives, like, not everyone's job is to care as much about the company as yours, and they're not going to be able to handle the level of stress that you do. That's why you're the CEO. But you should care about people. It doesn't go away, but your job is to also steer, and the way you do that is by clearly communicating, by doing what you say you will, by building trust, and by hiring people you trust to also be good people managers.
I was just going to say, and you can't expect employees to have the same sort of level of stress, and you don't want them to, that you have.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when you feel like, oh my God, I'm not my best self, you have to remember that, like, it's your job to make sure that you maintain, like, really good communication at the company, to demonstrate empathy wherever possible, but that, like, the people who work for you don't feel all the same feelings of stress that you feel.
Yeah, your job is, like, sort of to be criticized. So, like, you know, like, it's that's like hard for any human being, and that's fine. But you should, like, recognize that, take the time to recharge, and, like, show up. Like, that is still hard for me, right? Like, you were just constantly, like, it's a stressful job.
And one decision you make that might benefit the company might actually impact somebody else negatively. And so you can never be loved by everybody at all times. Like, that's just not going to happen.
All right, this next one's from Colleen.
Hi, Colleen.
It is, when do you fire yourself as CEO, parentheses, pick my question, Leif?
Hey.
It worked.
I think that you should have a lot of self-awareness is, like, sort of a constant exercise. It's not easy. It's not a natural thing. And one of the things that's really important is to know, I think, Oliver, you said this, like, what you're good at and what you're not good at. And if you are constantly sort of asking yourself that question, you will know at what stage, like, if you are still doing the job or having fun and doing that well. And for some people, it really depends. Like, some people are just early growth people. They're, like, good students, bad test takers. They like building the 0 to 1, and then they're done and they hand over. Some people, you know, they take a company public and then they hand over the reins. Some people bring in a COO that they're sort of grooming to be, like, a president. It's very dependent on who you are and how willing you are to also change and learn and still enjoy that job. Like, it's not one job. There's multiple jobs. And I think you mentioned this, Oliver, like, old school sort of, like, company building playbook used to be, like, technical founder, bring in professional CEO, let them scale it, right? And now it's a little bit different, but, like, both models can work.
Yeah, I mean, this company is my baby. I want it to be successful no matter what. That's more important than my own ego. I've heard that everybody has some CEO capacity, basically, where they go. And, you know, maybe you're Mark Zuckerberg, and he's been running that company, by all accounts, very effectively for the last 15 or 20 years or whatever. My hunch is I'm not going to be. Just knowing myself, I don't really like the little, like, logistic details that, for example, public company CEOs have to get into. The only question is, how far will I go? And, you know, maybe I will develop that capacity. But if I ever get to the point where it's like, okay, company needs some other executive that knows how to do these things and really cares about it as much as I cared about doing the other stuff, I'll be the first person to tap myself out.
Sometimes when companies get to be really big, to Travis's point, I feel like they become really political, like the positions become really political. And so I know personally I'm not the best politician in the world, so I'm not sure what that means for me. But I've seen lots of CEOs who have the ability to hire people who have done it before at the next phase of growth. And if you're good at hiring executives and leaders, that definitely helps, because you can't be expected to be a domain expert at every single area of your company. So I think it's just, like, knowing when to also hire a new marketing leader or a new engineering leader or product leader that actually understands what it's like to go IPO or understands, definitely helps your longevity if that's what you're after. But self-awareness is important to know, like, okay, it's time to bring in somebody else, like, that understands how to, go on CNBC and talk about those.
You're going to be on there.
I don't know.
All right, we have just a little bit of time. Is there anything that someone feels like they need the audience to hear before we wrap things up?
I feel like, oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, if anybody wants to talk to, I'm sure everyone here would be willing to talk after about, like, what do I do? Where do I begin?
At your happy hour.
At our happy hour, yeah. Happy hour, yeah. So yeah, I come by and like we'll give you the VC list, like introduce you to whoever. To Travis's point, introductions are everything. So. Yeah,
I mean, to extend on that, I've never been part of an underdog group before, and most companies fail, and entrepreneurs really do help each other. So if anybody thinks that they might want to do this, we're happy to help. There's a ton of other entrepreneurs in the community that are going to be very generous with their time, so you don't have to go out alone.
Cool. Well, thanks for attending. Thanks for submitting questions. And yeah.